When discussing current events in our environment, pollution is usually the first thing that comes to people's minds. Human action in the pursuit of progress has always been a direct cause of the heavy amount of pollution in the world, and these actions will continue to have a lasting effect for years to come. It is also through humanity's inaction that the pollution problem gets worse and worse. Without knowing our impact on the world through pollution, how could we ever create a solution?
This need for concrete information was seen by our documentarian group, and we believe that we can solve this problem as members of Gen Z. The preservation of our planet is constantly on our minds. As such, this is a topic that is well suited for us to explore and create a documentary around. We intend to examine different subtopics under the umbrella topic of pollution, looking into the effects of climate change on the world as well as water and agricultural pollution.
This documentary will also explore the effects of pollution on the world, like global warming and the other types that are hidden, like noise. Through this wide examination of topics, we can give a clear insight into the human contributions to pollution all over the world and offer solutions to fix this increasingly dangerous problem.
There are many contributions to issues in nature. One of the leading issues in our day is climate change. Climate change is referred to as the long-term effects in the global climate, like Earth's rising temperatures, as well as the effects that come from it, like melting glaciers, heavier rainstorms, or frequent droughts. The sun, earth, wind, rain, forests, deserts, oceans, and especially human choices are all connected to the contributing long-term effects. Climate change is caused by greenhouse emissions released in the air from coal, oil, and gas, which are heat-trapping gases. Carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide are the main three being released into the air. Before the 1800s, most climate shifts were natural causes, but now they are human-caused, whether they realize it or not. The biggest issue right now is that humans aren't realizing that their actions are hurting the environment around them and the animals around them, like the polar bears in the video. Their home is being melted because of the Earth's rising temperatures, and unfortunately in the future, their home is not going to be there anymore because of all the ice melting. Not only is melting ice and glaciers a big effect of climate change, some other big effects of climate change are the rising temperatures and the sea level rise, which can cause extreme weather conditions like tsunamis, which can then destroy cities and towns that are all by the ocean.
I had the opportunity to speak with an environmental science student so she could provide her input and her point of view on issues in nature. When she was asked what issues does she think are the most pressing and why, she mentioned deforestation. She said how photosynthesis allows carbon to be taken out of the air that has been stuck in trees and plants, and when mass amounts of trees are cut down, the carbon in the air can't be taken out and therefore remains in the atmosphere, and it turns into a greenhouse gas, which then causes the planet to warm up, which is the leading cause of climate change. She also mentioned air pollution and how a lot of matter is made up of dirt, dust, and smoke, and these particles can accumulate in your lungs from breathing them in, which can cause asthma or other respiratory issues, which can harm people who are at risk or older. She said, when asked what consequences we would face if we let these issues continue, she said that with deforestation, if we still continue to tree loss, the carbon accumulation in the atmosphere will just rise and climate change will still be a huge issue, and there's no going back from that once we do get too far. Also, when you do have less trees, it doesn't give you enough oxygen to breathe. And with air pollution, a consequence we may face is asthma and other respiratory diseases are becoming more common now, and which are now causing more deaths for people worldwide. We also talked about some initiatives that can be taken to solve these two main issues, like air pollution and deforestation. And she said that for deforestation, stop taking down trees, which obviously sometimes us people who are normal civilians don't have a say in that, but we can help plant trees or just stop the harm on plants and trees that we do see in our everyday life. And then a solution to air pollution is walk, ride your bike, public transportation, carpool, because cars are the leading cause of pollution into the air. So if we all take one step at a time and just share the next ride with someone, it'll help make a huge difference when it comes to air pollution.
This is the introduction to agricultural pollution. Agricultural overproduction and underconsumption are one of the most overlooked environmental issues that most people contribute to on a daily basis. The agriculture scene has caused a lot of pollution not only to the environment but also to the body of its consumers. The pesticides normally used to kill wildlife that grows on fruits and veggies that we consume every day are often detrimental to the wildlife environment surrounding where it's grown and the water sources that surround it as well. Not only that, but modern day agriculture has contributed to the mass overproduction of produce, which leads to ample amounts of waste within our society that could be otherwise used differently. There are several factors that contribute to agricultural pollution, but the main four are overproduction of produce, harmful use of pesticides, potentially harmful overuse of harsh fertilizers, and waste of food. Though agricultural pollution may sound minuscule, it can have severe effects on the environment. For one, the large amounts of food wasted on a daily basis usually end up in landfills, which is detrimental to the environment because of the greenhouse gas it produces. The methane rotten food produces has shown to be more harmful than carbon dioxide, which is one of the main causes of climate change today. Another effect on the environment is the use of pesticides. The pollution that pesticides contribute to is most harmful to the environment around it. This is most evident in the water that surrounds big farms because of the water cycle. After precipitation takes place, the water runoff usually finds itself in the surrounding aquatic communities. This can have harmful effects on organisms within those ecosystems. Agricultural pollution can also be harmful to the body itself, as pesticide pollution is also harmful when it comes to the produce we consume. There aren't enough precautions taken place to ensure that humans don't consume trace amounts of these pesticides. So, on every fruit and vegetable grown within these farms, there are usually bugs, bacteria, and pesticides that we eat. Though agricultural pollution is a widespread global issue, there are many things that people can do daily to help combat this problem. Composting is one of the most simple ways people can combat agricultural pollution, as it requires basically no extra work and investing in home gardens is also helpful, as it's not only beneficial to the environment but one's body as well. Fresh fruit and vegetables can make a huge positive change in one's health. Only eating what you consume and not overbuying is very important when combating this issue. In the age of inflation, this benefits not only the consumer but the environment as well. Also, the regulation of pesticides would be helpful. This has more to do with the government, but is possible if a bunch of people are rallying behind the issue.
Plastic pollution has become one of the most pressing issues nature is facing. Plastic pollution is seen in many forms. Most notably, it is garbage floating through the ocean. However, microplastics also flow through the air, water, and human body. Plastic production has become so prevalent that almost everything in the world has traces of microplastics. Microplastics can affect the environment and the animals that inhabit the world. Plastic does not degrade in the environment, so it remains for years to come. The plastic can end up in animal stomachs, which would kill them. The animal population is correlated directly to the human population. If animals disappear, the food chain will be disrupted and cause chaos on Earth. The main cause of plastic pollution is human disrespect. People litter and throw trash straight into the ocean without thinking about the consequences. Additionally, there are alternatives to plastic that can be used instead so they degrade over time. An interview will be conducted with a professional scuba diver and professor here at the University of Kentucky to shed some light on the pressing issues of plastic pollution.
I'm here with Dr. Hirsch. Could you please introduce yourself?
I'm Dr. Lou Hirsch. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Plant Pathology in the Martin Gatton College of Agriculture, Food, and Environment. And I think more germane to this talk is that I think I'm the only scuba instructor who's a member of UK's faculty.
So approximately how many scuba dives have you been on in your life?
I've been on approximately 1,500 scuba dives. Most of that was earlier in my life, in my late teens and early 20s, when I was an active scuba instructor in Florida and California. And also in California, I earned a Coast Guard's captain's license, and I managed a scuba diving company out of San Diego for 2 years.
So would you say you have seen an increase in plastic pollution in the ocean?
Absolutely. And when I think of plastic pollution, at least in terms of scuba diving, I think of sort of macroplastics, just stuff that I could see with my eyeballs, although I know that microplastics are becoming more and more of a thing every day. But on the water, I have, and it's been a while, right, because I live in Kentucky now, but earlier in my career, I just remember always seeing floating debris in the ocean, whether it was abandoned fishing gear or in San Diego, I remember knowing it was high school graduation time because there would be huge strings of balloons that had been let loose, I guess, and then drifted out to sea and then popped and then just were floating on the ocean. In addition to all the other sort of standard plastic bags and everything else that you'd expect. And in terms of scuba diving, a lot of plastic floats, but a lot of it sinks too. And I have just seen, I've seen more plastic grocery bags wrapped around coral heads than I care to remember.
And we've also seen an increase in microplastic levels in the ocean. Could you give us an example of how plants might react to microplastics?
That's a good question. So microplastics, in terms of how plants respond to them in the ocean, I'm not, and perhaps people know this information better than me, but I'm not aware of the effects of microplastics on plants as much as I am with the effects of microplastics on animals. So I would say, just based upon my own knowledge, which again, I'm not an expert in microplastic issues in the ocean, is that if mammals, I'm thinking, ones that eat aquatic plants, like say manatees, for example, or if there are microplastics in the environment, and if there are a higher concentration of those microplastics in plants, and manatees are eating, hundreds and hundreds of pounds of aquatic grass a week, then as they ingest these microplastics cause untold havoc on mammalian biochemistry. I know a lot of these PFASs and other forever chemicals that are present in these plastics tend to disrupt kind of hormone production and cause lots of different problems. We don't know exactly what, but probably issues in reproduction, probably issues in cancer, probably issues in a lot of different things, just because organisms haven't had to deal with these chemicals.
Now, just being general, what do you think will happen to the environment if pollution is not addressed? Like, it could be not just in the ocean, but like in the air, per se.
Sure. Well, yeah, so whatever's in the air goes into the ocean. And I mean, it's going to change everything. Organisms respond to stimuli in the environment by adapting or dying. And these changes that humans are forcing upon the environment are so new in terms of chemical signatures that our planet's organisms are used to seeing, that it's probably going to kill most organisms. And we're seeing that now. We're in the midst of another great extinction, this time not caused by a meteor strike or volcanic eruptions, but by humans changing the environment and causing a lot of other organisms to die. So pollution we can think about in terms of microplastics. We can think about in terms of just carbon molecules in the atmosphere, which, by the way, largely gets absorbed by the ocean, which changes the acidity of the ocean. We can think about different fossil fuel runoffs. We could think about different fertilizers that get into the water supply in the rivers and then get into the ocean and cause algal blooms, which then die, and the bacteria eat the algae, and the bacteria suck up all the oxygen from the water, which then causes anoxias, which then forces the organisms that can't swim to essentially suffocate. We've dammed up a lot of freshwater ecosystems, like in the Everglades, for example, which has led to an increase in the salinity of the ocean around coral reefs. Coral, largely, or at least the ones in the Florida, can't tolerate high salinity environments like what we expect to see in the open ocean. They require slightly less salinic environments due to the traditional freshwater runoff of the Everglades. So if we've dammed off the Everglades, we've increased the salinity of the water around the coral, which stresses them out, in addition to changes in pH, which makes it hard for them to form their polyp shells, and ocean temperatures, which cause bleaching, and bacterial contaminants from leaking septic systems, which kills a lot of different coral. It's not good. Something I try and think about is, I'm 40 years old. When I got certified in when I was 14 years old, so this was, do that math, 26 years ago, I dove in the Florida Keys, and all of the elkhorn and staghorn coral had died. And that's the one that looked like antlers, and they're kind of what you see in like National Geographic videos. And they'd all died in a couple years before due to climatic issues, and then they were really susceptible to fecal coliform bacteria that came into the ocean from leaking septic tanks. They were just, for whatever reason, really susceptible to dying from those bacteria. And the coral had died, but it was still kind of rubble on the ground, like on the floor of the ocean. And then I went back to work in the Keys 4 or 5 years later as an adult and as a professional diver, and all of that staghorn coral had just degraded into sand. And if you go to the Keys now, there's not a lot of living coral. It's about 5% coverage left. It's mainly just algae covered rocks. And that's what I expect to see in almost everywhere in the world throughout my lifetime. I'm trying to go where I can to see the coral before it all disappears.
Well, thank you for doing this. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Overall, the effects of plastic pollution are coming, and there is no stopping them as the damage is already done. Research on plastic in the environment must be prioritized. Also, the ocean cleanup groups need more funding and more members. The ocean is massive, and no group can clean it alone. Plastic pollution and pollution in general need more coverage to show people what happens due to their own ignorance and indifference. Simply picking up a plastic bag at the beach can save a marine animal's life.
Something we may not realize is oil spills play a big role in destroying our environment by contaminating our water and destroying habitats that our animals reside in. And not only does it affect the animals, it affects us as well and the planet that we call home. The causes of oil spills are human error, some examples being accidents involving tankers, and then the oil leaks out of containers. Even natural disasters can cause oil spills, such as hurricanes. Countries at war, illegal dumpings, pipelines burstings are all examples of causes that create oil spills. Effects on the environment. It then floats on top of oceans, rivers, and lakes, causing a thin layer of oil called an oil slick, which then hurts our marine life, birds, mammals, and fish. Many of the animals ingest the oil when they try to groom themselves, which ends up poisoning them, and then they die. It also is bad for animals with fur because it can damage their fur and the water-repelling ability of birds, thus exposing animals to harsh elements they are not used to and maybe being caught by predators they would easily escape from. A few solutions to combating oil spills are skimmers, which is a boat that scoops spilled oil from the water surface, vacuum trucks, which vacuum oil off beaches and can even vacuum oil off the water surface, and then sorbents, which are big sponges that are used to absorb the oil. That is just a small amount of options we have to combat oil spills. Some other ways we can stop them from even happening is being more careful when transporting oil and being cautious when we have them in large factories. Also, being cautious of where these factories are located.
When a person thinks of the effects of pollution, thoughts spring to mind of the physical toll on the Earth's air and water supply. However, while a person cannot see noise pollution, they can certainly hear and feel its effects on the world. Noise pollution, often called sound pollution, is defined by Britannica as, quote, unwanted or excessive sounds that can have deleterious effects on human health, wildlife, and environmental quality. It can be hard to imagine that sound would ever be as considered as harmful as deforestation or oil spills, but with the high rate of development in urban areas, it is becoming much harder of a problem to ignore, and is something that society must solve. The causes of noise pollution include many modern technologies, such as vehicles, trucks, buses, planes, music equipment, stereos, loudspeakers, megaphones, and industrial equipment, machinery, lawnmowers, vacuums. In metropolitan areas, this manifests commonly as road traffic and construction. The primary worry with noise pollution is the long-term effects associated with prolonged exposure to these types of sounds. Hearing damage can occur quickly from extremely loud noises such as explosions, or over many years from constant exposure to loud sounds. Some diseases can spawn from noise pollution, such as sensorineural hearing loss, which occurs when the ear is exposed to deafening noise levels more than 85 decibels over a long period of time. With this disease, a person cannot hear the voice of someone talking at a normal level who is right next to them. This can happen over a long period of time and will probably not be noticed until it's too late, as it cannot be corrected. With the rise of urbanization, noise pollution and issues like this has become more of a problem than ever before. Noise pollution may seem like an unstoppable force in the world because it is closely tied to the rise of urbanization and the development of human society. However, many climate activists and government officials are taking steps to limit the amount of noise pollution in their areas. As stated in an article by the Times of India, government officials are taking action to combat the level of noise pollution in dense urban environments. There, they have made designated silence zones that outlaw any sound-emitting equipment or sources during certain hours of the day and night. These areas are usually around hospitals, schools, and residential buildings, and government courts. Even though enforcement authorities in these silence zones make sure to keep things quiet, construction continues to be a major issue, especially during the night. These same silence zones can be replicated everywhere if governments give the proper amount of resources and support to make these zones a reality in urban centers around the world. In fact, some governing bodies have started them in our oceans. Zones already have been replicated for marine life with the help of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA for short. As part of their ocean noise strategy, they establish and maintain international marine sanctuaries in order to reduce the amount of noise in the ocean. In an interview with Dr. Leela Hatch, a marine ecologist at the Stawagan Bank National Marine Sanctuary and co-leader of NOAA's ocean noise strategy, explains that marine life's ability to use echolocation is heavily affected by noise pollution. Things like underwater drilling and constant sailing of cargo causes distress for marine life and affects their ability to mate properly. The sanctuaries, usually surrounding well-known mating areas, provide safety for marine life and protection against sailing above them. The group's efforts are widely recognized and celebrated, saving hundreds of species from overfishing and quieting the ocean altogether. While these wide-scale efforts are important, it is still imperative for the average person to do their part in helping stop the rise of noise pollution. The solutions are tame, comparatively, such as turning down the volume of your headphones, wearing earplugs to loud events, such as the sports games or concerts, or riding a bike or carpooling to places. However, these small efforts help a person save both others as well as themselves from prolonged hearing damage and make the world just a bit more peaceful. In conclusion, pollution in its various forms presents a multifaceted challenge that requires immediate and collective action. From the undeniable impacts of climate change to the insidious effects of agricultural practices, plastic pollution, oil spills, and even noise pollution, our planet is facing a crisis that demands our attention.
However, with awareness, education, and proactive measures, there's hope for a cleaner, healthier future. As members of Generation Z and concerned global citizens, we have the power to drive change and adopt sustainable practices that can mitigate the damage caused by pollution. Together, we can pave the way for a more sustainable and harmonious relationship with our environment, ensuring a brighter future for generations to come.
Let's seize this opportunity to make a positive impact, inspiring others to join us in this crucial endeavor. Though through collaboration and innovation, we can turn the tide and create a world where nature thrives and humanity coexists in balance with our planet's precious ecosystem.